Hello there everyone, welcome to Little Mountain Ranch. If you're new here, my name is Chelsea, and if you've been here before, welcome back. We are going to be heading into the garden to do a whole bunch of harvesting today. Now the way I've been harvesting this year has been a little bit different than years past, and the primary reason for that is we are having an absolutely fabulous fall, and we have had beautifully warm temperatures. So unlike years past where I'm always racing with the frost and the winter, I'm always trying to get ahead of it, I generally harvest everything all at once. So when my potatoes become ready, they all come out of the ground at once and into the root cellar, carrots, squash, and so on. But because we've had a nice long warm autumn, it's not even officially autumn yet, but it is weather-wise in our region, I have been able to harvest in a little bit more of a paced way, which has been really nice. So the potatoes are a good example of that. I have 2 rows that were double rows that we have already picked. So I'll take you down to the root cellar in a little bit and show you what we have already, but I do have a row here that I need to pick. You can see that the row of potatoes that's right here that we're going to harvest right now has been munched on. And the reason for that is that I have unplugged my electric fence and pushed it down around this garden so that my sheep and my other animals can get in here and clean up whatever it is that they want to eat, because they can't cause any harm at this point. The only thing that I have left in here are these potatoes, which are under the ground. I don't have to worry about them getting in under the ground. And I have some beautiful pumpkins back over this way. I cannot believe the number of pumpkins that are off of just these 2 plants. We'll check it out in just a minute. But I have all these pumpkins here, and the sheep aren't at all interested in eating pumpkins. Now, if I had goats, I would not be letting them in here, because the goats will chew on the surface, even though they won't eat a ton of the pumpkins or the squash. They will cause damage to them, so don't do this if you have goats. The nice thing too is that they don't like eating cosmos or marigolds, which I have planted in here. So they're still looking beautiful. They're a really good choice for flowers if you do have livestock or wildlife around, because they generally don't like eating those kinds of flowers. So that's why I plant those up here. The sunflower here is a volunteer. They do like munching on the sunflowers, not so much the sheep, but the cows could reach over the side and eat those. And I can see that they ate the one down that's back over there. But the long and short of it is they can't cause much harm in this garden at this point. Look at these beauties over here. This one is a Cinderella pumpkin. We have a Jardale. Look at that. Gorgeous pumpkin. Isn't that beautiful? So we have, that's the only ones I planted up here. So there's only 2 plants, and we have, let's see, how many pumpkins do we have in here? So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 up in over there, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Do we have any over here? Nope, I think just vines over here. That's 11 pumpkins off of 2 plants, friends. So I was showing you in the last video the other 2 big squash patches that I have, and I asked you to take a guess on how many you thought we had, and most of the guesses came in at 24, 25, 26, kind of in the 20s range. So as you can see, we are going to have lots more than that, since we already have 11 just off of these 2 plants down here. So my guess is over 200. That's how many I think we're going to end up with. So we'll have to wait and see in the next couple of weeks how many we get. But in the meantime, let's pick some potatoes, and then we'll figure out how many pounds of potatoes we ended up getting out of the garden this year. I used weed barrier in the pathways of my potato patch this year, and this was the first time that I had done that, and it won't be the last time, because it was so nice not having to weed a lot in here. Once all of the potato plants get large enough, there's very little weeding that's required, and it was fantastic. So I'll definitely be doing that again. I'm curious to see what this row is going to produce, because we got some of the biggest potatoes we've ever grown off of this next row that was down right here. So super curious about these ones. That's a nice looking one, isn't it? Well, these ones aren't as big, but they do look nice. When it comes to harvesting potatoes, what is recommended, and I don't do what's recommended, so I'll share what I do in a minute, but what's recommended is to dig your potatoes up, let them dry out a little bit. Don't leave them out in direct light or any type of bright light for very long, because they will start to turn a little bit green, and that green part of the potato can make you sick if you eat it. You can just peel it off. But the longer you leave it out in the sun, the more that happens. And then put it somewhere where it's out of bright light, even covered with a sheet or something like that, and let them cure for a week or two. And what that does is helps to create a thicker skin so that when you put it into storage, it stores better. However, I've done it in multiple different ways over the years. So I've done it that way, exactly kind of textbook way for curing potatoes. I have even washed my potatoes before I put them into storage. I've done that lots, where I'll just lay my potatoes out, spray them all off, let them dry out, and then put them right into the root cellar. Or I'm doing what I'm doing, am going to do today. And that's take my potatoes, brush them off a little bit, put them into the crates, and then put them right down into the root cellar. And I'll be honest with you, all three different ways that I have cured potatoes, I have noticed absolutely zero difference in the storage ability of them. Last year I did thousands of pounds. We had thousands of pounds of potatoes, and because we had so many, I didn't bother curing them or anything, and we had potatoes all the way into the end of May, maybe even the beginning of June, and no issues at all with storage ability. So experiment with different ways of harvesting and storing your potatoes, depending on your situation, but don't stress too much about kind of doing it the perfect way. I think that big commercial farmers that do that, where they're going to be shipping potatoes, they really want to make sure that the skins of the potatoes are well cured so that they don't get banged up during shipping. But I'm obviously not doing that, so I don't have to worry about it. These potatoes are so much smaller than the ones. So the ones that we picked over there were called Excellency. There was a mix of Excellency and Russet. And I'll show you the size of them when we go down to the root cellar, but they were crazy. So what I normally do is when I have little teeny tiny potatoes like that, I'll just set those aside and we'll bring them inside and just eat them fresh. But for anything that's this size, we'll go into storage. Oops, I split one. I'm usually pretty good at not cutting through them. That's a nice one. There are so many potatoes under this one plant. Holy moly. Wow. Unbelievable. That's incredible. The biggest thing that I have learned about growing really good potatoes is to make sure that the soil stays evenly moist throughout the growing season. They're prone to all kinds of issues when they go into drought conditions. So I made an effort to make sure that my potato patch stayed really well watered this year. And even though I had scab in this garden for the last couple of years, so scab, let's see if I can find any that has any scab. Fortunately, I really don't have scab too bad this year. I will find one because I know we did. Oh, here's one over here. So on this potato here, can you see this scabby looking stuff. That's called scab, and it is caused by a virus in the soil that can stay in the soil for several years, but it is very much exacerbated by a couple of things. Low water or drought conditions. That's one of the biggest things that I have found to impact scab on my potatoes. Too much nitrogen in your soil can also exacerbate it, so putting too much compost into your soil. Having your soil too alkaline, not acidic enough, can also cause an issue with your potatoes as well. But the number one thing that I can say that I have noticed to be the biggest exacerbator of scab is not sufficient water. And because this soil had scab in it for sure, and the fact that I have so many potatoes that don't have scab, and the only difference is the amount of water that I gave them this year, that definitely proves the point, at least it does to me. So I'm going to make sure that I always have my potato patch really well watered throughout the summer, especially during drought conditions. I can see I still have a couple of onions in here that I need to pull out as well. This is where I grew the brunt of my white onions this year. We did harvest all of our red onions, so I'll show you those when we go down to where I am curing those. Curing onions is a little bit different than curing potatoes. It does really make a difference for storageability, but we'll talk more about that when we get down there. Oh, here's a good example. This potato was sticking up out of the soil. Can you see all that green on there? So one of the reasons why I use mulch in my garden, this is the rotted hay mulch that we put on this patch in the spring, is for any of the potatoes that start to come up out of the soil, the mulch keeps them covered so that this doesn't happen. I don't have very many that are sticking out of the ground and green like this. I do not hill my potatoes either. So not only do I not cure my potatoes the way it's recommended to cure them, but I also do not hill my potatoes. I used to hill my potatoes, but I've done lots of comparisons between hilling and not hilling using mulch. So what I do is just plant my potatoes about 6 to 8 inches deep, and then as soon as they come up out of the ground and we have a little green on the top, I cover them with about 6 to 8 inches of mulch and call it a day. I have also not ever noticed a difference in the quantity of potatoes I get by hilling potatoes. There is, I'm trying to remember the name of the channel. I think it's M.I. Gardner. He comes from a long line of potato growers, and he's kind of debunked the myth that hilling your potatoes equates to a larger potato harvest. In the same way that I've done in my own garden, I've just done direct comparisons and I've seen absolutely no difference in hilling them, and because hilling takes so much effort. And I should say, for those that aren't familiar with hilling, that's basically where you plant your potato. As it starts to grow green, you hill up soil around it, and you do that a couple of times throughout the season. And what I was always taught back in the day was that that would cause more tuber growth. I have never found that to be the case. The tubers tend to grow. I don't know if I can actually show this to you. Let me see if I can. Okay, so the idea is that if you, as the plant comes up, you bury it so that up to say about here is covered in soil, and then this is going to grow more roots and more tubers. And I just have not seen that actually play out in my garden. The tubers grow off the very bottom of where the potato, the seed potato is planted. All these roots grow off, and then the potatoes form around, just right around the base of this plant. And so it's not worth the effort to me, because even if I were to get, let's say, even though I've never seen this play out, I were to get maybe 2 more potatoes, it's not worth the time and the effort for me to be worrying about hilling my potatoes all summer. The one benefit I would say of hilling potatoes is that as you hill them and you drag the hoe across the soil, you kind of weed at the same time. But layering this mulch on the way that I do has basically the same end result by suppressing the weeds. Usually I make sure that I stay on top of any big weeds that are coming out of my potato patch throughout the summer. But by the time we're kind of mid-August, I just let it be. So whatever weeds come up in my garden, they get to grow. But I will say, and I have talked about this before, making sure that you get your garden weeded out any weeds that are going to go to seed, even if it's late in the season, even if it's a pain and you're tired of gardening. Your future self will thank you by getting all of those weeds that are going to seed out of your garden. I can see one right here that I have not done, and I'm just going to let you see what I'm talking about. This one here is a pigweed. It's huge. It was right at the very end, actually coming out through my weed barrier. Look at all of the seeds that are on that. There's thousands of them. And if I did not pull this out of my garden right now, all of those seeds would go in and I would be pulling all of those plants out, all of those weeds out next year. So highly encourage you to get your garden weeded one last time at the end of the season so that doesn't happen. Another benefit of allowing my sheep to come in through here is they do tend to clean out any of the weeds that I've missed. So let's get back to getting all of these picked. And fortunately, I don't have that many to do. I wanted to show you something here. Let's wipe off the dirt off of it. Okay, so if you've ever grown potatoes, you might have seen these little guys form on some of your potato plants. Now, it does seem to be that these don't form on all of them, but on some, every year I end up getting a few. And these are little potato fruits. And on the inside of them, this is dirty because I just had to cut it with my shovel, but you can see little seeds there. So these are potato seeds. I don't know a lot about growing potatoes from this type of seed. What we're most familiar with is growing from seed potatoes themselves. I know that it can be done, but I know that it's most often done by people that are into developing specific lines of potatoes or specific characteristics in them. So I just thought I would mention that because this was actually asked in my membership community last week. So I figured there was probably more people that were curious. This is what it looks like when it's not cut in half, if I didn't show you that already. So I keep saying I'm going to get into harvesting these potatoes and I keep getting distracted by all the cool facts that I want to share with you about potatoes, but let's get into getting these pulled out. All right, friends, potatoes are dug. I am smoking hot, so I'm actually going to leave these here out in the sun for a little bit, just long enough to go down to the garden and harvest some of the things that I have to pick down there. And then we'll get this into boxes and take it down to the root cellar, and I'll show you the root cellar. Could it be any more beautiful out today? We don't have any smoke, which I am so incredibly grateful for. We had, I think, almost 2 weeks of really smoky skies. And it just makes you feel awful when it's smoky like that, but it is cleared out and it is still so beautiful. We are into the middle of September. We still have not even seen anywhere near a frost. It's been so warm and glorious, and I'm so grateful for it. So what we're down here to pick is zucchinis. This is going to be the final harvest of zucchinis. I have some absolute mammoth zucchinis, and I'm going to tell you what I'm going to do with them in just a sec. Wonder how many we're going to get. Okay, that is off of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 plants, and I still have 2 more in the high tunnel that probably have 4 zucchinis on each one that I have to pick, and that's a lot of zucchini. But I'm very excited because as I was down on that end of the garden picking zucchini, I found something that I cannot wait to eat. This is a crookneck squash, and I got one decent harvest off of it this summer, and then it stopped, but apparently it put on another flush of flowers, and we have a whole bunch of fruit in here. And for those of you that are more expert at growing crookneck summer squash than I am, you'll be very happy to see the size of these squash, because whenever I pick these, I always have people tell me that I'm picking them when they are too big. I personally love them. They're my absolute favorite summer squash, so I haven't minded the size that I've been picking them at. But we have a bunch of little ones like this, which is what I'm guessing is the size that I should be picking them at. So we're gonna pick a bunch of these, and I'm gonna have these fried up with some garlic and butter for lunch. So delicious. Not a ton, but a few. There's actually a lot more that probably within a few days I'll be able to harvest. So they're super teeny tiny like this. So I'll give them another day or so. But we have lots that are this size. This is always the size that I pick them at that you guys tell me is too far along. But I personally think they're pretty good. This garden this year has been other level for production, and I think it mostly has to do with the fact that we had a wonderful heat wave in August, and then we've had this extended period of time of warmth where we normally would have frost by now, so things are just going gangbusters. Can you guys see right there on the big sunflower over there? We actually have lots of birds eating the sunflower seeds, which is one of the reasons why I grow them outside of the fact that they're absolutely beautiful. I do them to feed the birds so that they have lots of fuel for their flight south. Okay, this right back here is the next thing that we're gonna harvest. This is all of my celery. Right here we have, in front of this, we have some baby pak choi seed, and you can see it's all dried out. This is the perfect time to harvest. Can you hear that? All the loose seeds in there. So what I like to do is just pick off some of these heads. You don't need that many because there are a lot of seeds in each one of these little pods, and then open them up inside on a plate so that way I don't lose the seed. So I'm going to pull all these out. Certainly don't need this many, that's for sure. And then got some grasses growing in here too. We have some lovely, beautiful stalks. Let's give it a try and see how it is for flavor. I did water it 2 days ago really deeply so that there would be lots of water in the stalks so they wouldn't be dry and woody. Oh my goodness. Fresh food from the garden. There's just no beating it. It is absolutely delicious. And I personally don't like a really strong celery flavor. So by watering it like this, it kind of waters down the flavor a little bit, I guess. plan for all of this celery is to get it cut right down to the ground, and then I'm going to bring it up to the house and chop it up and freeze dry it. I like it freeze dried primarily. I use a lot of celery in soups and stews throughout the winter time. I hope I have enough here. Actually, I have about 20 plants or so right here, which is a little bit less than I have planted in years past, but it's growing better than it's ever grown before, so I think we're going to have enough. And I saved the stalk tops as well for making stock, which we're going to be doing next week when I have all my meat birds coming in. We're going to be parting those out and canning them and making soup stock with them, with the bones, so I'll save the tops for that. So, question is, where is my harvesting knife? I'll be right back. Friends, look at the size of this sunflower. It's huge, but look at the top. So it's really tall. It's probably 7 feet tall, but it is just enormous. This one here is my absolute favorite sunflower of the year. Just gorgeous. This one is a hybrid, but I'm hoping that if I can get some seed off of it, which I'm going to pull off right now, that I'm able to get something similar next year. It is a cross between a teddy bear, and this is what a teddy bear looks like, this guy right here, and an autumn beauty, which is kind of what this one looks like. And they're just beautiful. So definitely going to get some seed off these. So I'm just cutting it off right at the bottom like that. I've been harvesting off of this all summer, so you just take them off the outside and then the inside will continue to grow, but I definitely think we're gonna have enough for winter, so that's awesome. There, that should do us. Doesn't that just look beautiful? Okay, these are the beans that I planted, and we actually have a fair number of beans on here, but because I have to deal with all of that celery now, I am going to leave these for another day. So what I have left to pull out of the garden, I have some beautiful purple acre cabbages you can see back there. I have these beans, beets, kale, carrots, sprouts, and then the squash, of course, which I can't wait for. What else? Oh, we have this. So these are parsnips. I have never been successful growing really large parsnips, and that's sad because I love them. This year looks like it might be a little bit of a different year. So like everything else in the garden this year, these are looking awesome. I have not actually dug one of the roots out to see how they're looking, so I thought we could do that together now. I won't be pulling these out of the garden until we have a frost. Let them get as big as they can, and then I'll put them in the root cellar. I didn't plant that many, one, because I haven't been really successful, so I didn't want to waste a lot of garden space. Wish I had now. And two, because only myself and one of my daughters likes parsnips, so we didn't need to have that many. But let me go find a shovel and we'll try to dig one up and see how they're looking. Before I forgot, I did go grab some of those beautiful sunflowers with the seeds on them, so we'll drop those in here. Now, what I'm hoping to be able to do is I will check the germination on those and just make sure that the germination is good, and then I want to do a giveaway probably in October or so for some of these seeds, because I've had so many people ask for them. So I thought that that would be fun. I will say, however, that I can't guarantee what kind of sunflower they're going to produce because they'll be a hybrid, but I thought that would be fun anyway. One thing I will say about parsnips is that the leaves have a chemical in them that can burn your skin. So if you're going to be harvesting a large amount of these, I would recommend wearing gloves, but I'm just doing one. I want to make sure I get down right down deep so I don't break it off. Oh, shoot, I heard it snap. Did you hear that? Oh my goodness. What? Look at the size of that parsnip. What is even happening in my garden this year? This is crazy. That is very exciting to me. So the question is, how on earth, because I have a feeling that that root was probably that long, am I going to get these out? Oh, it smells so good. Definitely gonna have that for lunch today. I like them mashed up with butter and salt and pepper. So good. But I'm gonna see if I can get down there and find the rest of that root. See how long it was. I just cut off another little chunk of it. I don't even know how on earth. For those that grow parsnips, how do you get them out from way down if they're really deep? Yeah, I just keep cutting more pieces off of it. But those are so much bigger than I thought. Okay, I'm way down here now. Oh. I can see it. It's down there almost 2 feet. Okay. Okay, I got most of it, the little tiny end piece, which is fine, but look at that parsnip. That is so exciting. Wow, definitely wish I had planted a much bigger patch. One of the things I did do differently this year is I worked the ground really well, and I planted these really early. So as soon as the ground could be worked, literally as soon as the ground was not frozen any longer, that's when I planted them, because they need a long time to grow a big, beautiful root like that. But that is definitely a big, beautiful root. Wow, what an awesome day in the garden so far. You know, for fun, I want to weigh the produce that we picked today, because I am very curious to see the amount of pounds of food that we picked. The plan with all of those zucchinis is all of the smaller ones, I'm going to grate those up, freeze dry them, and then use them in soups, stews, and muffins and breads and all that kind of stuff in the wintertime. But for the really big ones, I'm actually going to be putting those in my storage room. I use my grow room for storing my squash. And I will be feeding those to the chickens throughout the winter, because the skin, once they grow really large like that, their skin gets really tough. So even though technically they are a summer squash intended to be eaten in the summer when they're small, they can grow out and store. And my chickens love them, and it gives them a little bit of semi-fresh food in the wintertime today. So let's go do an approximation on those zucchinis. I would say these are definitely a couple of pounds. They are super hefty, even without the greens attached. And I'd say we have, I don't know, maybe a couple of pounds worth of those summer squash. Oh, look, friends, we have some sugar pumpkins that are just about ready. Their stems are starting to dry out. In fact, I could probably pick this one. The way that you tell that your squash are ready is the stems will dry off completely. And if you try to stick your nail in, you won't be able to dent it. And you can see I dented that one, and there's a bit of liquid coming out of there. So we definitely want to leave these for a little while yet, but we're very close to pumpkin pie. And these guys I am also really excited about. This is a type of butternut squash, which is one of my favorite squashes, and I always have a hard time getting them to ripen in the garden, and they're totally ripening, which is so darn exciting. I'm gonna see if I can find the tag in here. There it is. These ones were Burpee Butterbush. What an awesome squash. Okay, I'm gonna say these guys weigh 3 pounds a piece. Some of them weigh significantly more than that. I definitely have, I'm gonna guess this guy here is more in the 10-pound range of squash. Oh my gosh. Let's call it somewhere around probably 140 pounds of zucchini, which is pretty outrageous. And then we have the 2 bins of celery over there. Each of those probably weighs, let's say 25 pounds-ish or so, somewhere in that range. So we'll call it 40 pounds, 50 pounds of celery here. Okay, now we're gonna head down to the root cellar. I got some help to move all of those potatoes that I picked into the root cellar. I'll show you what we have as our final tally for potatoes, but we'll figure out, or we'll do an estimate on the amount of pounds of potatoes that we picked today as well. Feels like a pretty good harvest day out here. So now that you know that we had, what was it, 12 pumpkins up there off those 2 plants, do you have any guesses of how many squash and pumpkins we have in this patch? I have probably around 20 plants in here, and they are all different kinds of squash. There are pumpkins in here. There's some giant Dill's Atlantic, Big Macs pumpkins, Cinderella pumpkins. I also have butternut squash, buttercup squash, spaghetti squash. I don't know what else I have in here. I have some Geet Okasamen in here, candy roasters, a whole bunch of different kinds. So any guesses how many we have in here? And then up in the main part of the garden, I have another 5 plants, maybe 10 plants. So it's gonna be a lot of squash this year, but my root cellar's right down there. So let's head down that way. This is kind of interesting. Just walking down here, and we have a spaghetti squash here, and the vines on this plant have died back. They're just starting, you can see a change in the color. They're just starting to die back on the rest of the patch, but these ones have died back. So I wonder if they're not quite all the way dry, but pretty close. Look at that beauty. We're gonna have that one for dinner tonight. So our favorite way to eat spaghetti squash is cut in half, seeds removed, stuffed full of meat sauce, covered with mozzarella cheese, and then baked in the oven. It's very, very delicious. So now we have this to add to today's tally, and I'm gonna say this is 5 pounds, maybe, or so. So that one plant there has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 squash on it. So it gives you a little bit of a better idea of how many we have here, but it's going to be a lot. This still has a little bit of moisture left in here, so I can leave these guys out here in the patch. I don't want to have them hit by any type of hard frost. A light frost is okay, but a hard frost can actually permeate the skin and then affect its ability to store. So I do like to get them out. So I'm going to guess, by looking at this and looking at the temperatures, that we're probably going to harvest all our squash in about 2 weeks' time. So that'll be fun. Okay, so here is my old root cellar built back in around the 1930s with some updates in the 80s. And all of the containers that I use a variety of different things. I use wooden crates. My favorite are milk carton crates. Those plastic ones, the one that I had up there, those are my favorite ones for storing anything that has really good airflow. And what I do when I empty out my root cellar in the late spring is I open up the doors and air out my root cellar. I take all my containers and I pressure wash them, and then I leave them out in the sun for a couple of weeks, and the UV rays kills any mold spores or anything like that that would be on the containers, and then I reuse them again. Alrighty, let's head in. Oh, it's nice and cool in here. All right, we picked around 400 pounds of potatoes today and around 400 pounds of potatoes over the last 2 weeks or so, and plus all the potatoes that we've eaten throughout the summer. But let's call it around 800 pounds of potatoes grown in the garden this year, which is significantly less than the several thousand pounds of tomatoes we grew last year, but we had way more than we could ever need. I ended up having quite a few left at the end of the season. So this is fantastic. Let me show you what we have. This is the root cellar. We have a concrete wall here, and then it is actually dirt walls. Don't worry about that. I actually took that one down. It's not needed because we have these sonotubes, concrete filled sonotubes, and actually a concrete ceiling as well. But then we have dirt. So it's basically a big hole in the ground that maintains above freezing temperatures throughout the winter. So here are some of the potatoes that we have, and we have more over here. I have dreamt for years of doing some work on this and actually potentially putting concrete walls all the way around and shelving in here so that I can utilize the space a little bit better, because I still have hundreds of carrots to bring in here. I have all of the turnips, the rutabagas, the beets, and the parsnips to bring in here. So it's going to be absolutely bursting at the seams by the end of harvest season. This is primarily a root cellar, so just for root crops. Anything like, what would be an example? So squash actually don't do well in a root cellar. It is too humid for them and they end up rotting. Onions, same thing, too humid. Also, onions and potatoes do not do well. They're not good storage buddies. The onions cause the potatoes to rot faster. What else do I not store in here? Apples. I have tried storing apples in here before, but it gave them a really off flavor. So we don't store apples in here either. Garlic, same thing, too much moisture in here. So it really is just a root cellar, but my goodness, friends, does it ever store root vegetables well. When I first saw this root cellar, I was so incredibly excited about it. I know it kind of seems creepy for a lot of people, but for me, it's actually heavily nostalgic, because my grandparents had a root cellar in their basement. It was actually their basement, and then you would go down these little skinny stairs to the root cellar, and the smell of it and going down to get vegetables from the root cellar was just such a fun thing to do as a kid. So when I open the door, I get a blast to that feeling of kind of the magic of childhood. So to me, it's not creepy at all. I know it is for some people, but I absolutely love it. I love the smell of it and the feel of it. It's nice and cool in here compared to outside. I still have to go grab those few onions that were up in the potato patch garden and get those brought down. Oh, that's one thing I did want to show you before. I'm glad that I just reminded myself of that, but I did want to show you all the red onions that we ended up picking the other day before we close out today's video. Okay, so all of the white onions, I've been slowly working through those and getting those freeze-dried. But because they were pretty much cured, we took all the white onions and stuck them kind of stacked on each other all the way around the perimeter of this lower shelf, and then filled out the rest with red onions. So all the onions across the whole top, all the way around, along with the first part of the shelf here, all the way around, are all the red onions. And we ended up with somewhere around 500 of them. And look at them, they're so fantastic. So this is a red wing onion, and these are a fabulous storage onion. My plan is for all of the white onions, for the most part, I am going to be running these through the freeze dryer over the next 4 weeks and freeze drying them, because they're fantastic freeze dried. But I really love red onions fresh. So I like them just refrigerator pickled for like pork tacos, things like that. I like them on sandwiches. I like them on burgers. I like them in salad. So I like to have these cured very well so that I can store them down in my cold room in the house to eat fresh throughout the winter. And as they start turning, which they do take quite a long time, I've had them store all the way into the spring before, I'll just chop them up and freeze dry them. But I am planning on giving quite a few onions away, but also freeze drying the surplus, anything that we don't use this year. The nice thing about freeze drying is it lasts for years and years and years. So let's say something happened and for some reason I wasn't able to grow a garden. Having freeze dried vegetables from previous gardens means that we have really good quality homegrown food, even if I'm not able to garden. So that's the plan with the majority of these onions. I hope you enjoyed this harvest day, my friends, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. Bye.